There are rules to survival that we all know. Look both ways before you cross the street. Lock your doors at night. Don't talk to strangers. But what happens when the rules change? What happens when the road you're driving on refuses to end? Or when the technology you bought to keep you safe is actually watching you sleep? Welcome back to Bedtime Story Hour. Tonight, I have 3 true terrifying accounts that will make you question your safety. First, we'll take a night shift at a warehouse where following the protocol is the only thing keeping you alive. Then, we'll take a drive down a lonely highway where time and reality are broken. And finally, a home invasion nightmare that proves you are never truly alone in your own house. So, turn off the lights, pull the covers up tight, and listen closely. Because once you hear these stories, you might not want to close your eyes. Let's begin. Story 1. The Night Watch at Site Delta. I shouldn't have taken the job. I know that now. But when you're 3 months behind on rent and eating ramen noodles twice a day, a paycheck is a paycheck. The listing on Craigslist was vague. It just said, night security, immediate hire, $30 an hour, cash paid weekly. $30 an hour just to sit in a booth and watch monitors? In this economy, that's unheard of. I didn't ask questions. I emailed the contact, a guy named Mr. Henderson, and he told me to show up that night at 10 p.m. at an industrial parkway out on the edge of the city. The place was called Site Delta. It was a massive logistics warehouse, the kind used by those giant shipping companies. It must have been 20 acres of corrugated steel sitting in a gravel lot surrounded by barbed wire fences. When I pulled up, the gate was open. There were no other cars in the lot. The whole place looked dead. The only light came from a small guard shack near the main entrance. Mr. Henderson was waiting for me inside the shack. He was a small guy, sweating through his cheap suit even though it was a cool night. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He didn't shake my hand. He just pointed to a metal clipboard on the desk. Sign the NDA on top, he said, his voice twitchy. Then read the protocol sheet beneath it. Read it twice. If you can't follow the protocol, leave now. I signed the non-disclosure agreement without reading it. Then I lifted the page to look at the protocol sheet. It was a single piece of laminated paper with Site Delta Nightwatch Rules typed at the top in bold. Your shift is from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Do not leave the guard shack between these hours under any circumstances. Do not let anyone in. There are no deliveries scheduled at night. If police or fire services arrive, do not open the gate. Call the number on the red phone immediately. You must watch the camera monitors at all times. Do not use your personal phone. Do not fall asleep. The warehouse is currently empty. If you see movement in Sector C on Monitor 4, do not zoom in. Look away from the monitor for a full 60 seconds. When you look back, it will be gone. If the landline phone rings and the caller ID says, internal, answer it immediately. Say Site Delta is secure, then hang up. If you do not answer by the 3rd ring, lock the guard shack door and get under the desk. Wait until sunrise. Sometime between 3 a.m. and 3:30 a.m., you may hear heavy knocking on the metal door of the guard shack. Do not acknowledge it. Do not look out the window. Do not ask who is there. It will stop eventually. If you see a man in a yellow hard hat walking near the perimeter fence, do not panic. He is just checking the lines. But whatever you do, do not make eye contact with him through the cameras. He hates being watched. I looked up from the clipboard. Is this a joke? Henderson wasn't laughing. His eyes were wide, almost bulging out of his head. Does it look like a joke? The last guy thought rule number 6 was a joke. We're still cleaning out his booth. He checked his watch. It was 9:58 p.m. I have to go. The gate locks automatically at 10. Don't screw this up, kid. He practically ran to his car. I watched his taillights disappear down the dark road just as the massive chain-link gate slid shut with a loud, final clang. I was alone. The first 2 hours were boring. Just dead silence and the hum of the monitors. The guard shack smelled like stale coffee and old sweat. I sat in the swivel chair, watching 12 black and white screens showing different angles of the empty warehouse interior and the dark exterior lot. It was easy money, I told myself. Just stupid rules to scare off thieves. Around midnight, I got thirsty. I reached into my backpack for a water bottle and realized I'd left it in my car. My car was just 50 feet away, parked just inside the gate. I looked at rule number 1. Do not leave the guard shack between these hours under any circumstances. I hesitated. It was 50 feet. It would take 10 seconds. Henderson was just trying to scare me, right? I grabbed the door handle. It was cold metal. I almost turned it, but something stopped me. It was the total silence outside. It felt heavy. It felt like the silence was waiting for me to make a noise. I let go of the handle. I decided I could stay thirsty. At 1:15 a.m., the landline rang. It made me jump so hard I nearly fell out of the chair. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stared at the caller ID. It just said, internal. Rule number 5. Answer it immediately. Say site Delta is secure, then hang up. I grabbed the receiver on the second ring. My hand was shaking. Site Delta is secure, I said. My voice sounded thin and weak. There was silence on the other end. Not dead air, but a live silence. I could hear faint, wet breathing. Slow, raspy inhales, like someone with something caught in their throat. Then, a voice. It didn't sound human. It sounded like rocks grinding together in a cavern deep underground. Is it? The voice whispered. Click. The line went dead. I stared at the receiver. The rule said to hang up after I spoke. It didn't say anything about the other side speaking back. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I put the phone down slowly, feeling sick to my stomach. I forced my eyes back to the monitors. I had to stay focused. Everything was quiet until 2:45 a.m. I was scanning the screens, trying to keep my eyes from drifting closed, when I saw it on monitor 4. Sector C. It was the middle of the massive warehouse floor. Rows and rows of empty metal shelving stretched into the darkness. But in the center aisle, something was moving. It was tall, too tall to be a person. It looked thin and gray, like a shadow that had peeled itself off the floor. It was moving jerkily between the shelves, its limbs bending at angles that made my own joints ache just watching it. My stomach dropped. Rule number 4. If you see movement in Sector C on monitor 4, do not zoom in. Look away from the monitor for a full 60 seconds. My hand was hovering over the control panel, my finger inches from the zoom button. It was human nature. You see something weird, you want a closer look. I almost pressed it before my brain screamed at me to stop. I tore my eyes away from the screen. I stared at the cinder block wall of the guard shack. I started counting out loud, my voice shaking. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. I could feel the monitor behind me. I could feel whatever was on that screen. It felt like the air in the small shack was getting colder, thicker. 58 Mississippi, 59 Mississippi, 60. I spun back to the monitors. Monitor 4 showed an empty warehouse aisle. Nothing but dust motes floating in the infrared light. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The rules were real. Whatever was happening here, the rules were the only thing keeping me safe. Then came 3 a.m. The witching hour. I was watching the time on my phone, dreading rule number 6. You may hear heavy knocking. Do not acknowledge it. 3:05 a.m. passed. 3:10 a.m. Maybe tonight would be easy. Maybe whatever it was took the night off. At 3:17 a.m., the first knock came. Boom. It wasn't a polite tap. It sounded like someone had taken a sledgehammer to the metal door right behind my head. The entire shack vibrated. I clamped my hands over my ears and squeezed my eyes shut. Do not acknowledge it. Do not look out the window. Boom, boom, boom. It was rhythmic, heavy, angry. I curled up in the chair, pulling my knees to my chest. The knocking was so loud I could feel it in my teeth. Then, a voice joined the knocking. It wasn't the grinding voice from the phone. This voice sounded familiar. Hey, open up. It's Henderson. I forgot my keys. It sounded exactly like the twitchy little man who hired me. But Henderson was terrified of this place. He wouldn't come back here at 3 a.m. Come on, kid, open the door. It's freezing out here. I just need to grab the keys off the desk. Boom, boom. It was tempting. It sounded so normal. What if it really was him? Then the voice changed. It dropped an octave, losing the nervous tremor of Henderson's voice and becoming smooth, almost syrupy. "Open the door, little pig. Let me in." I started humming to myself, trying to drown it out. I stared at the floor, refusing to look at the small window in the door. I knew if I looked, I wouldn't see Henderson's face. I don't know what I would see, but I knew it wouldn't be human. The knocking continued for 10 minutes. It felt like 10 years. Finally, after a massive crash that sounded like the door was about to buckle, it stopped. Dead silence returned to Site Delta. I didn't uncurl from the chair until 4 a.m. The rest of the night was a blur of adrenaline and terror. Every shadow on the monitors looked like a monster. Every creak of the shack sounded like a footstep. When the sun finally started to rise at 5:45 a.m., painting the sky a bruised purple, I have never felt such relief. At 5:55 a.m., I saw a black sedan pull up to the gate on the exterior camera. It was Henderson. As soon as the clock on the wall hit 6 a.m., I burst out of the shack. I didn't care about the money. I just wanted out. Henderson was waiting by the gate as it slid open. He looked worse than he had the night before. He held out an envelope thick with cash. "You made it," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. "Most don't make it through the first night." I snatched the envelope. "I quit," I said. "Keep your money. I'm done." "They all say that," Henderson murmured, looking past me toward the silent, massive warehouse. "But the money is good. And you know the rules now. It's easier the second time." I didn't answer him. I got in my car and drove away, tires spinning on the gravel. I didn't look back in my rearview mirror. I was afraid I might see the man in the yellow hard hat standing by the fence, watching me go. I'm never going back to Site Delta. But sometimes, when I'm alone in my apartment late at night, I get the feeling I'm being watched. And if my phone rings and the caller ID is blocked, I don't answer it. Story ends. Story 2. The Mile Marker. I've driven the I-80 corridor through Nebraska 100 times. It's the most boring stretch of road in America. Just 400 miles of cornfields, flat horizon, and the occasional smell of manure. It was about 11:30 at night. I was driving my 2015 Honda Civic, heading home for Thanksgiving break. The road was empty. I hadn't seen another pair of headlights for at least an hour. Just me, my high beams, and a true crime podcast playing softly through the speakers. I was making good time. I passed mile marker 112, checked my speedometer, cruising at a steady 75, and took a sip of lukewarm coffee. That's when I saw the truck. It was an old, beat-up Ford pickup, painted a faded cherry red. It was pulled over on the right shoulder, hazard lights blinking weakly in the darkness. The hood was up, steam pouring out into the cold night air. Standing next to the driver's side door was a man. He looked like a scarecrow, tall, skinny, wearing a dirty denim jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. As my headlights swept over him, he raised one hand and waved slowly. He wasn't frantically waving for help. It was just a slow, mechanical pivot of the arm, back and forth. I didn't stop. Call me paranoid, but you don't stop for strangers on a dark highway in the middle of nowhere. I moved into the left lane to give him space, muttered a quiet, "Sorry, buddy," and kept driving. I watched him in my rearview mirror until his hazard lights faded into a tiny orange dot and disappeared. I settled back into the drive. I figured I'd stop at the next rest area and call the state patrol to go check on him. 10 minutes passed. I was humming along to the radio, feeling the hypnosis of the road. Then, I saw taillights ahead. I frowned. I was going 75. Whoever was ahead of me must be going slow. I gained on them quickly. As I got closer, my stomach did a little flip. It was a truck, a faded cherry red Ford pickup. I let off the gas. That's weird, I thought. Maybe there are 2 red trucks in Nebraska? But as I got closer, I saw the details. The rust spot on the tailgate, shaped like a boot. The baby on board sticker that was peeling off the left corner. It was the same truck. But it wasn't broken down this time. It was driving. Okay, I whispered to myself. He must have got it fixed right after I passed him. And he must have been speeding like crazy to catch up and pass me. It was unlikely, but possible. I moved to the left lane to pass him. As I pulled alongside the truck, I looked over. The cab was dark. The driver was sitting rigid, staring straight ahead. It was the same guy, denim jacket, low cap. He didn't look at me. He just gripped the steering wheel with pale, white-knuckled hands. I gunned it. I pushed my Civic to 85 and shot past him. I didn't want to be near him. I put a mile between us, then 5, then 10. I checked the mirror constantly until the red truck was gone. I relaxed a little. Just a weird coincidence. Then I passed a green sign on the side of the road. Mile marker 112. I slammed on the brakes. My tires screeched, leaving black rubber on the asphalt. The car skidded slightly before I regained control. My heart was hammering in my throat. I had passed mile marker 112 20 minutes ago. I had been driving west in a straight line at 75 miles per hour. There is no way I could be back here. I looked at the GPS on my phone. No signal, just a spinning gray circle. Calm down, I said aloud. My voice sounded loud in the quiet car. You're tired. You misread the first sign. Maybe it was marker 122. I eased back onto the gas. I just needed to get to the next town. Just keep driving. 2 minutes later. Hazard lights ahead. No. The red truck was on the shoulder again. Hood up. Steam rising. I slowed down to a crawl. I couldn't breathe. It was the exact same scene. The same patch of gravel. The same steam. And the man. He was standing by the door. But he wasn't waving this time. He was pointing. He was pointing a long, bony finger directly at my car. As I rolled past, doing maybe 20 miles per hour, he turned his head. Under the shadow of the baseball cap, I saw his face. He didn't have eyes. Where his eyes should have been, the skin was just smooth. Like a doll. And he was smiling. A wide, impossible grin that stretched too far across his face. I screamed. I stomped on the gas pedal so hard my foot hurt. The engine roared, and I tore away from that spot. I didn't look in the mirror. I didn't check the speed. I just drove. I pushed the needle to 90, then 95. The car was shaking. I had to get off this road. I needed an exit. Any exit. I saw a green sign approaching. I prayed it was an exit ramp. Mile marker 112. I started crying. I'm a grown man, but I was sobbing. I was trapped. I was in a loop. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that if I passed that truck again, something terrible was going to happen. The first time he waved. The second time he pointed. The third time, I couldn't do it. I saw the hazard lights blinking in the distance. The third time, I made a split-second decision. I wasn't going to pass him. I slammed the steering wheel to the left. I drove across the median strip, the grass thumping loudly against the underside of my car. I crossed into the eastbound lanes, the oncoming traffic side. It was dangerous. It was stupid, but there were no cars coming. I drove the wrong way down the interstate. I pushed the car as fast as it would go, driving east, back the way I came. I watched the mile markers count down. I laughed. A hysterical, crazy laugh. I had broken the loop. I drove for an hour in the wrong direction until I saw the lights of a gas station. I pulled in, shaking so bad I couldn't get the keys out of the ignition. I ran inside and locked myself in the bathroom. I stayed there until the morning clerk threatened to call the cops. When I finally came out, the sun was up. The world looked normal. I walked back to my car, ready to call a tow truck or my parents. Anything but drive again. That's when I saw it. On the rear bumper of my car, right in the center, there was a dusty handprint. It was large, with long, spindly fingers. And scratched into the dust of my trunk, right above the handprint, were 3 words written in a jagged scrawl. See you soon. I sold that car the next week. I took a loss on it, but I didn't care. I fly home for holidays now. I don't care how expensive the tickets are. Because sometimes, when I'm lying in bed at night, passing that space between awake and asleep, I can still see the back of my eyelids. And in the darkness, I can see mile marker 112. And I know he's still there, waiting for me to drive by one last time. Story ends. Story 3. The Blind Spot. People say you should never be the first person to live in a newly renovated house. They say you need someone else to work out the kinks, the leaky pipes, the faulty wiring, the drafts. But I didn't listen. I was 26, freshly promoted to a junior architect role at my firm, and I had just signed the lease on a beautiful, modernized Victorian home in the suburbs of Seattle. The rent was suspiciously low. The landlord, a nervous guy named Mr. Geller, mumbled something about wanting a reliable tenant after the last few fell through. I didn't press him. The place was a steal. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, and a brand new smart security system pre-installed. That was the selling point for me. I'm a tech guy. I like control. The house came with the Sentinel, a fully integrated system with cameras at the front door, the back door, the living room, and the upstairs hallway. Everything connected to an app on my phone. I could see every inch of my house in 4K resolution from anywhere in the world. Or at least, I thought I could. The first week was perfect. The house was quiet. Too quiet, maybe. It was just me and the settling noises of the old wood frame. Creak. Pop groan. On the fourth night, I got the first notification. It was 2:13 a.m. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, lighting up the dark bedroom. I rolled over, groggy, and squinted at the screen. Motion detected, living room. My heart kick-started. I sat up, grabbing the phone. I tapped the notification to open the live feed. The screen loaded a crisp, black-and-white night vision view of my living room. I stared at the small screen, my thumb hovering over the dial 911 button. Nothing. The room was empty. The sofa sat motionless. The curtains were still. Glitch. I whispered, letting out a breath. I watched for another 30 seconds. Maybe a moth flew past the lens. Maybe a car headlight swept through the window. I marked it as a false alarm and went back to sleep. The next night, it happened again. 3:45 a.m. Motion detected, upstairs hallway. This one froze my blood. The hallway camera was right outside my bedroom door. I didn't turn on the light. I grabbed my phone and opened the app, my hands shaking. The feed loaded. The hallway was empty. The door to the guest room was closed. The bathroom door was ajar, just as I had left it. There was no one there. I got out of bed, grabbing the heavy metal flashlight I kept in the drawer. I opened my bedroom door and stepped into the hall. "Hello," I called out. My voice cracked. Silence. Just the hum of the refrigerator downstairs. I checked every room. Closets, shower curtains, under the beds. Nothing. The house was sealed tight. I called the security company the next day. A technician came out, ran some diagnostics, and shrugged. Sensitivity was set too high, he said, tapping on his tablet. Old houses have drafts. Dust motes can trigger the infrared if the gain is up. I dialed it down. You shouldn't get any more ghost pings. Ghost pings, I laughed nervously. Right. For 3 days, he was right. The phone stayed silent. I started to relax. Then came Tuesday. I was at work, sitting in a meeting, when my phone vibrated against the table. I glanced down. Sound detected, master bedroom. My bedroom. There was no camera in the bedroom. I valued my privacy. But the hallway camera had a microphone that could pick up audio from nearby rooms. I excused myself from the meeting and went to the break room. I put in my earbuds and opened the events tab on the app. I played back the clip marked 2 p.m. At first, it was just static. Then, distinct and clear, came a sound. Scritch, scritch. It sounded like dry skin dragging against drywall. Then, a heavy, wet cough. I felt cold all over. I live alone. I don't have pets. I left work immediately. I drove home doing 20 over the limit. When I got there, I drew my pocket knife and kicked the front door open. I searched the house like a SWAT team member. My bedroom was empty. But when I went to the closet, I stopped. My clothes were pushed to the side. On the back wall of the closet, near the floor, there was a small scuff mark. A smudge of black grease. I crouched down and touched it. It was fresh. I called the police. They came, took a report, and looked around. Probably a mouse in the walls, the officer said, looking bored. Sound carries in these old Victorians. Or maybe pipes. As for the smudge, could be anything. Unless you have signs of forced entry, there's not much we can do. They left. I was alone again. I didn't sleep in the bedroom that night. I slept on the living room couch with the lights on and a baseball bat across my chest. I stared at the Sentinel camera mounted in the corner of the ceiling. The little red LED light blinked back at me. I'm watching, it seemed to say. You're safe. I drifted off around 4 a.m. I woke up to the sun streaming through the blinds. I felt stiff and sore, but alive. No notifications. No alerts. I made coffee and laughed at myself. The cop was right. It was mice. Stress. Paranoia. I went about my week. But a nagging feeling stuck with me. A feeling of being observed. On Friday night, I decided to do a deep dive. The Sentinel app had a feature called Timeline Review. It allowed you to scrub through the last 24 hours of footage at high speed. I sat at my kitchen island with a glass of wine and started scrubbing through the footage from the living room camera while I was asleep on the couch the night before. I watched myself tossing and turning in fast motion. I watched myself kick off the blanket. I watched myself roll over. Then I stopped. I dropped the wine glass. It shattered on the floor, red liquid splashing everywhere, but I didn't move. I rewound the footage. I played it at normal speed. Timestamp, 3:12 a.m. I was asleep on the couch. The room was dark, lit only by the street lamps outside. From the far left corner of the screen, a spot behind the big armchair, a spot the camera barely covered, a shadow detached itself from the wall. It wasn't a shadow. It was a man. He was incredibly thin. He was wearing dirty, dark clothing that blended into the gloom. He was barefoot. He crawled. He didn't walk. He crawled on all fours like an insect, moving with terrifying silence across the hardwood floor. He crept toward the couch where I was sleeping. My hand flew to my mouth. I watched in horror as the figure reached the couch. He stood up slowly, looming over my sleeping body. He stood there for 5 minutes. He just watched me. Then, he leaned down. His face, a pale blur in the low-resolution night vision, hovered inches from mine. He didn't hurt me. He didn't steal anything. He reached out a long, filthy finger and gently touched my hair. Then, he turned and looked directly at the camera. He knew it was there. He smiled. A wide, toothless, knowing smile. He brought a finger to his lips. Shoo. Then he dropped back to all fours and scurried away, not toward the front door, and not toward the back door. He scurried toward the kitchen. I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I was watching this video. The air suddenly felt freezing. I looked at the timestamps. That was last night. He had been here. Where did he go? I looked at the live feed of the kitchen camera. It showed the island, the fridge, the stove. It was empty. But the video from last night showed him crawling into the kitchen and disappearing. There was only one place in the kitchen he could go. The pantry. I turned my head slowly to look at the pantry door behind me. It was a tall, narrow door. It was closed. I stood up, grabbing a steak knife from the butcher block on the counter. My hand was shaking so bad I almost dropped it. I dialed 911 on my phone with my left hand, holding the knife with my right. 911. What is your emergency? There's someone in my house, I whispered. I think he's in the pantry. Sir, are you safe? I don't know. And then I heard it. From behind the pantry door. A soft, wheezing sound. The same sound I heard on the audio recording. H-H-H-H-H. H-H-H-H-H. He was in there. He was listening to me. Sir, officers are dispatched. Get out of the house now, the dispatcher ordered. I backed away toward the front door. I'm leaving. I'm leaving now. I kept my eyes on the pantry door. I reached for the handle of the front door. And then, my phone buzzed. Motion detected, upstairs hallway. I froze. If he was in the pantry, what was moving upstairs? I looked at the phone screen. The upstairs hallway feed showed another figure. This one was smaller, crouched by the bedroom door. Then another buzz. Motion detected, living room. A third figure was crawling out from behind the armchair. My stomach bottomed out. It wasn't just one. It was a nest. The pantry door handle began to turn. Click. I didn't wait. I threw the door open and sprinted into the night. I ran until my lungs burned. I ran to the neighbor's house and pounded on their door until they woke up and let me in. When the police arrived, they surrounded the house. They went in with K-9 units and drawn guns. They found them, living in the crawl space between the floors, living in the gap behind the pantry false wall. There was a network of tunnels carved out behind the drywall, connecting the rooms like a human ant farm. The police found 3 people, a man, a woman, and a child. They were feral, filthy. They had been living there for months, maybe years. The landlord, Mr. Geller, had known. That's why the rent was cheap. He knew the house was infested, but he couldn't find them, so he rented it out, hoping the tenants would flush them out. They found my toothbrush in the man's bedding. They found photos of me sleeping taken on a stolen Polaroid camera. But that's not the part that haunts me. When I went back with the police to identify my stolen items, the detective showed me the nest inside the walls. It was insulated with old newspapers and stolen insulation. Right next to where the man slept, he had carved a small peephole through the drywall. The peephole looked directly into the shower in the master bathroom. And next to the peephole, written in black grease, the same grease from my closet, was a tally mark. There were 52 marks. I had lived there for 52 days. They watched me every single day. They watched me shower. They watched me eat. They stood over me while I slept and touched my hair. I moved into a high-rise apartment downtown. I live on the 20th floor. I have 24-hour doormen. I don't have an attic. I don't have a crawl space. But I still have a security camera. And every night, before I go to sleep, I check the closet. I check under the bed. And I tape over the lens of the camera. Because the scariest thing isn't being watched by a stranger. The scariest thing is knowing that for 52 days, I looked into the eyes of a monster, and I simply didn't see him blinking back. Story ends. And that is where we end our shift for tonight. I have to ask, which of these 3 stories unsettled you the most? Was it the rules of Site Delta, the endless loop of mile marker 112, or the guests living in the walls? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you survived this video and want to support the channel, please hit the like button. It helps the channel grow more than you know. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on the bell notification so you never miss a nightmare. I have many more stories to tell, and the night is just getting started. Until next time, sleep well. If you can.